A few weeks back, I decided to rewatch the first Transformers movie by Michael Bay as a way to prepare myself for Rise of the Beasts. Now, I wouldn't call it a great movie by any means, but at least it had that signature Michael Bay touch and a creative vision behind it. Little did I expect that a film made 15 years ago, despite its fair share of negative reviews, would turn out to be far superior to its 2023 counterpart. Especially considering that Bumblebee, the previous Transformers movie, was actually quite impressive and considered to be the best one of the bunch. So I found pretty disappointing to see that Transformers Rise of the Beasts didn't seem to learn from past mistakes and ended up being rather mediocre. In fact, it made me miss Michael Bay and his Bayhem. If you were to ask me whether this movie is a sequel or a reboot, honestly, I'm not entirely sure. The producers and the director seem to have different opinions on the matter, but let's just assume it's a reboot. In this story, we're introduced to Noah, portrayed by the talented Anthony Ramos. By a stroke of fate, Noah stumbles upon the robot Mirage, voiced by Pete Davidson, and eventually Noah joins forces with the Autobots and Maximals on a mission to locate a powerful artifact and prevent Unicron, a colossal planet-devouring robot, from destroying both Earth and Cybertron, home of the Autobots. Now, let me make something really clear. Noah stands out as one of the most charismatic characters in the franchise, though that isn't necessarily saying much, and I found Mirage to be pretty funny and endearing without being a pain in the butt. And let me tell you, that's quite a feat considering I'm far from being a fan of Pete Davidson.
Oh, okay.
The movie also takes the time to develop Mirage's character in some capacity, or at least enough for me to care about him. And there lies the root of all the problems with this movie. It seems like they did everything halfway. Noah's character lacks a clear need or personal motivation beyond providing for his family and taking care of his sick brother, which, by the way, I had no idea what his illness even was, let alone know whether it's terminal or something, because we never see his brother in pain or showing any discomfort at all. So there's no sense of urgency or reason for us to care. Also, Noah doesn't aspire to stop being a loser like Sam Witwicky or strive to become a better person or anything. Moreover, the relationship between Noah and Mirage is also poorly executed. They become friends simply by spending time together, rather than having any emotional connection or shared moral values beyond wanting to do the right thing, which is one of the weakest motivations a protagonist can ever have. Just look at Rey. At least in the first Transformers movie, the relationship between Sam and Bumblebee feels more organic as Sam wanted a car for so long and eventually became attached to it, which naturally developed their bond. And let's not forget Bumblebee itself, where they provided a step-by-step guide on how to create a relationship between a robot and a human. But this movie decided to ignore all that. Similarly, there's another human character named Elena, portrayed by the talented Dominic Fishback, but unfortunately, her character feels underutilized. It's as if she's there solely to move the plot forward. She conveniently discovers the magic key, cracks a few jokes, and ends up running around with the MacGuffin from one place to another. Her relationship with Noah doesn't feel genuine at all, and although Dominic does an excellent job with the poorly written role she's given, the character itself is quite forgettable. But not as forgettable as the plot or the Maximals themselves. If you're someone like me who grew up watching the Beast Wars cartoon, which by the way we all found out to be pretty cool as kids, but realized later on that it was pretty crappy, you'll likely be disappointed with their lack of screen time. One of the main issues in how they're handled lies in how the trailers and marketing campaign hinted at a conflict between the Maximals and the Autobots, which seemed pretty cool. However, in reality, they only have like a brief disagreement that lasts a couple of minutes and that's it. Speaking of the robots, I can wrap my head around how the visual effects, while looking decent, somehow managed to look worse than those in the first movie. The robots look like they're made of plastic and lack any weight, and to top it off, the sound design is lousy. I mean, these huge machines barely make any noise and the hits lack any impact. As for the characterizations, besides Optimus, Mirage, and A-Razor, the rest of the robots lack any distinctive personality or anything resembling a development. At least in the Michael Bay movies, you could tell them apart, but here they almost feel like interchangeable. It's ironic that they feel more like toys than actual characters in a movie. Moving on to the villains, they're extremely generic. Scourge comes off as a watered down and boring version of Steppenwolf from Justice League, while Unicron feels like a Galactus 2.0. The saddest part is that if you're a fan of the franchise, you know very well that Unicron is arguably the most powerful villain in the Transformers universe, yet here his presence is reduced to a mere couple of minutes and he's depicted as a shapeless ball floating in space. But hey, don't get me wrong, I was well aware of what I was getting into when I bought my ticket for a Transformers movie. I can forgive things like forgettable villains and an original plot, if at the very least there are endearing characters, entertaining action sequences with giant robots, and some sort of creative execution of the story. Sadly, this movie lacks all of that. The second act was pretty boring to me. When compared to the Michael Bay films, obvious flaws aside, they at least had visually creative cinematography and a sense of scale and geography, which is sorely missing in Rise of the Beasts. The staging here is just plain mediocre by the franchise standards. But let's be honest, if you're a die-hard fan of all the Transformers movies, you're probably used to hearing negative reviews, and no matter what I or other critics say, you'll still enjoy it, and that's perfectly fine. However, for those who were seeking something more exciting, with a plot that didn't rely on cliches of blockbuster movies, including the obligatory final battle between CGI armies and the infamous Skybeam, or at least hoping that the franchise would continue with the great quality seen in Bumblebee, well, you won't find it here. Sure, there were moments that I enjoyed and I was flabbergasted by the final Easter egg. I could even go as far as saying that this is the third best Transformers movie. But let's be honest, the bar has never been set very high.